Welcome in. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Greg Katz. Greg, we are looking at USC's trip out to Tucson to take on the Arizona Wildcats on Saturday afternoon. Looking at that game and doing a little bit of predicting here, who is your one USC player that you are most interested in and kind of how they perform against Arizona?
Well, I'm going to take the avant-garde route on this one because I think with the probability, according to Clay Helton, that center Brett Nealon's not going to play, I'm going to focus in on Justin Dedich, uh, who is the backup center. We know that sometimes the backup center can be problematic, especially when you're not taking the ball off the tee. But I suspect that Justin will do a good job, but then he's going to be making the line calls, and anything can happen, first away game. So we'll see what happens. But I think that my own personal experience is you better watch what's happening with a backup center because he's the first one to touch the ball.
Yeah, and does a number kind of on your depth. He's a guy who could play a couple different spots. If he's in the starting lineup, you lose that kind of sixth man coming off the bench there on the offensive line. I'll go on the other side of the ball. I'm looking at at Paulie Naote. He's a guy where now it's game two under Todd Orlando, and when you look at kind of what the season is, boy, you're a chunk of the way through. You can't kind of keep having that learning curve and kind of difficulty implementing this new defense because you really have to get going. And there's a few guys on defense that I'm interested in seeing, but really him. And if he can play up to that level that Clay Helton has certainly set for him with the way he's talked about him in fall camp and even leading up to that Arizona State game. Todd Orlando said that the linebackers were okay, is kind of how he phrased it after their performance against Arizona State. So that's the guy I want to see. I want to see if he can kind of get closer to the expectations set for him by his head coach and by his position coach. Flipping over now and looking at a statistic for you, which is the stat for you that you feel is the most important in this game, or the one that you're going to have your eye on?
Well, my one is going to be on how many passes USC is going to throw. And I don't know whether, based on the questions you're asking, it would be the same answer, after Arizona. I don't think Arizona is a good team. I think SC should be able to name the score. I think SC should be able to pretty much do what it wants on offense. But that doesn't mean that I think that they're doing a great job. I'm going to look at how many pass attempts compared to how many running attempts, how effective the running game is. And honestly speaking, aren't we all excited to see what happens on a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1? Because if they can't move it, that's going to be an indication you couldn't do it against a good ASU defense, or at least reasonably good front. And you're not doing it against a questionable Arizona front. So, do I want to see Slovis complete 40 passes in a game? Not really. I want to see exactly how they treat the Arizona game because I think they can pretty much do what they want. So we'll see what they want.
Maybe the one thing that prevents them from doing what they want is what I'm looking at, and that's turnovers. You can't have 4 more turnovers against a team like Arizona and that defense that's just been decimated by guys graduating or guys transferring. And like you said, USC needs to come into this game knowing and then proving that they can name the score and that they can do what they want offensively. If they turn the ball over again, you're in another shootout. And also, if they turn the ball over again, it's a little bit of that, fool me once, fool me twice. If this starts to become a trend for this team, I mean, USC has not been a great team in terms of turnovers, either turnover margin or just offensive turnovers. That they have piled them up over the last couple years. They need to figure out how to get those under control. And I think Arizona gives you kind of a chance to get that under control. So that's what I'm watching to see if that number was at 4 against Arizona State, and you could probably tack on a couple of those fourth down turnovers too. The turnovers on downs, they count just as much as losing the ball via fumble or interception. So that's what I'm
Well,
watching.
I think what you're saying is got a great deal of validity to it. And let me just expand just briefly on that. You know, no matter who's coaching, the assistant coaches are, if these problems remain the same, then you have to say this is a pattern of behavior that you could bring in a new offensive staff, a new defensive staff. Why is this continuing? And you know, that's what they pay the head coach for. He gets the big bucks.
Yeah, it would go a long way to put up a zero for offensive turnovers against Arizona. Kind of maybe tuck that behind you a little bit as you get in to the rest of that schedule. So let's do it. Your prediction, a score prediction, what you see the outcome of USC's trip to Arizona.
Well, I don't think this is a game where I would say if the Trojans play as well as they can play and Arizona plays as well as they can play, SC is going to win. I think I feel comfortable giving a score. I'm probably being a little conservative because I just not sure about what USC really is capable of doing or not doing, depending on, like you've said, the turnovers. So I'm going to go 34, Arizona 17. And I'm not so sure that Arizona is going to score 17. And I'm not so sure SC is not going to score more than 34. But I figured SC is good for at least 4 touchdowns and 2 field goals, which means that they're moving the ball. And I'm not so sure that Arizona is going to score 2 touchdowns and 1 field goal, or 1 touchdown and 2 field goals along that, and maybe 3 field goals, who knows. But because we have to take into account that SC has played a game and Arizona has not played a game. So it would seem to me that Arizona is probably more turnover prone because they'll be excited, and SC is probably a little less turnover prone because they probably got reamed good in practice about holding onto the ball and not turning it over and not throwing the ball into double coverage. So there's a lot of difference between a first game and a second game.
Yeah, I think all the sort of sloppiness that we saw from USC, I think it's fair to expect a lot of that from Arizona, with a lot of new faces kind of spread over a lot of different positions too. I'm gonna spread your margin a little bit, and I like kind of what the game looked like last year, 41-14 for USC. So I guess I'm giving USC an extra touchdown and taking a field goal away from Arizona from what you did. I do think that this is one of those where at some point USC's talent is just going to show up, and we saw it in a couple games, and Arizona was one of them last year, where you just start rolling, and I don't think Arizona has kind of the personnel to be able to stand up to that if USC can get going. USC put up just a ton of yards, and it really was the turnovers that kind of kept them from doing it. Now USC gave those turnovers away. You can't just excuse them, but I do think that in this game, they're able to get things going, take a big step against Arizona, and try to set themselves up for the rest of that season. So again, a 12:30 kickoff Pacific time on Saturday, USC going out to Arizona to take on the Wildcats. It'll be Arizona's first game of the 2020 season. USC, their second game, looking to put a big statement as they look to take a real solid control of that Pac-12 South, already 1-0 on the season.